and guest lady. Guys, we have a very ambitious schedule today, so I'd like to get started. First of all, we do have a new member, came in a little later. Joel, would you just mind standing up and giving us a brief summary of where you live, what you do?
My wife. I live in Centennial Mill, all right, with a whole lot of other members, I think, here. Currently, do I have to stand next to him? Is that what you want? Currently unemployed. But that's going to change, I think, within a couple of weeks, thank God. What else did you ask me? My memory's real short.
What did you do, or what are you looking at?
I'm in transportation sales. I work for a trucking company. That's what I'm looking to get back into, trucking.
Well, welcome aboard. We're glad to have you.
Thank you.
We added something a little bit special. I want to go right into that. Rich and Mike are going to do a little thing as far as what's going on in Gaza, a brief update for us. And Rich is going to have a couple of prayers for us as well. So, okay, Michael, go first.
Good morning, everyone. Don't forget that Israel is 7 hours ahead of us right now. And as of about 8 o'clock this morning, the death toll of the Israelis is 45. 43 soldiers and 2 civilians. The thing that really gets me aggravated is how somehow, in many people's eyes, including media, the story is how many of the Palestinian Arabs are being killed, the civilians, and that it's so little for the Israelis. Well, my goodness, one side invests in protecting its civilians. The other side uses its civilians to protect its missiles, human shields. But I have some papers here, and I'd like to give you, as of 8 o'clock this morning, some of the information. But first, some background and a quick question. How many people, just by show of hands, have heard of Islamic Jihad? Okay. How many people have heard of Hezbollah? How many people have heard of the Islamic resistance movement? Hezbollah means the party of God. Islamic Jihad, generally speaking, you hear that name, you don't like them. The Islamic resistance movement, why the hell do we call that group Hamas? That's a sanitized name. What does Hamas mean? Chaos. You take the Arabic words for their name, and the acronym for the transliteration to English is Hamas. The translation of the Arabic is the Islamic Resistance Movement. You hear that right away, you don't like them. Don't sanitize it. If you ever have a conversation about anything going on there and you're going to say Hamas, first say the Islamic Resistance Movement, also known as Hamas. Okay? That should help some of the PR with Israel. We've heard about the London Blitz. So many people killed during World War II by the Blitz. Hamas has already sent more missiles into Israel than ever fell in London. That's another interesting thing. Of course, 43,000 people died in London. And luckily, because of all the expenditures used to protect civilians in Israel, and thank God for the Iron Dome missile system, only 2 so far. One of our former members, Rich Gare, I'm sure as many of you remember Rich, is a Holocaust professor, and he's at a conference in Jerusalem and traveling all over the country, and I read his Facebook postings. And when I actually called him a few weeks ago, and he was at the Kotel, the Wailing Wall, the Western Wall, and all of a sudden he says, "Oh, I got to run into a tunnel. There's an air raid. The siren's going off." That's unbelievable to me. And any of you have been there to think of that. Well, you may have heard about, and I'm going to jump into some of the releases that came from the Israeli Foreign Ministry. An unsettling thing is We know about ISIS, the Islamic State. Well, again, that's a terminology error. The actual name is ISIL, and the last one is the Levant, Levant. That area is where Israel is, and Jordan is, and the Sinai is, and Lebanon is, and Syria is, and Iraq is. They want to create an Islamic state and reform the caliphate. They even announced the caliphate in the land that they have. Now, you don't hear this, but they already have territory larger than most countries in Europe. And they established the caliphate. The caliphate is a governmental entity based 100% on the Quran. And everything that's related to that, if you know anything about Islam. I won't take time for that, but it's important to know that a large city called Mosul, M-O-S-U-L, in Iraq, has been a city with thousands and thousands of Christians for about 1,000 years. They just told them all, leave, be killed, or convert. What do you hear from the world about that? Nothing. But God forbid a Jew bumps into an Arab in Gaza. That'll be a special on CNN. I know this is editorializing, but here's some things that aren't. The thing that's scary is this ISIL is so rabid, so vicious. Al-Qaeda doesn't want to associate with them. And one of the largest militias in Iraq is Al-Qaeda. They're trying to escape. Now here's the news relating to us. Where are they going? They're now at the border of Israel and Jordan. That's significant. Let's see. I'm sure you've heard about the terror tunnels. Israel's main thing is to try to destroy as much of the missile infrastructure and missile launching facilities that the Islamic resistance movement has set up in Gaza. The other thing is that they're trying to destroy the tunnels that have been built. Now, they're not just digging tunnels. These are reinforced concrete. Now, this is the thing that gets me shaking my head about Israel. Where have they gotten the concrete from? Hundreds of thousands of tons of cement. Israel supplies it. Every single day, every day, Israel supplies several hundred truckloads of supplies to Gaza with food, oil. They supply electricity. I don't understand it. I understand they have high ideals, but you don't win wars by helping the enemy. These tunnels that are being built, and they show they're amazing. I mean, you walk through them and you can see the big reinforced ceilings. And yet, that's a decision that they made. Now, what about the tunnels? Remember Shalit, the soldier who was captured some years ago and held for 5 years? They went through a tunnel, killed the people that were with them, and captured them. What did they discover? Now, most people haven't heard this, I'm sure. This came from the government. They found out that many of the tunnels that they've discovered 30 so far, many of those tunnels, you won't believe it, lead to kibbutz surrounding Gaza and come up under schools. They went to the schools and found where they were going to come up. From interrogating the prisoners they've captured, they learned that they were going to send squads to kill everybody they could and bring back Israeli prisoners. In one of the tunnels, well, several of the tunnels, they found large amounts of handcuffs and the cable ties that they use, and drugs to sedate people. This was a major, major, mind-blowing thing that they found out just last week, and they uncovered a lot of it. It's not very comforting, is it? Now, what about Israel's goals? Obviously, look, some people will say, just kill them all. Well, you know you can't do that. And that's not a Jewish way of doing it anyway. They don't do it. But they want to, hopefully, demilitarize Hamas. That's not going to happen. Those people have integrity. They do. Hamas has integrity. They say right off the bat, we want to kill Jews. How do you know it? Am I trying to just slur them? They teach it in their schools, they preach it in their mosques, it's on the children's programming, and it's in their foundation documents. The Hamas Charter, kill Jews. Kill Jews, wherever they are. And this is what people are backing. Now, they want to demilitarize them, destroy these tunnels. Do they want to kill them all? If they did, they probably wouldn't be warning them before they attack. They do it over and over. Israel set up last week a field hospital just outside of Gaza for any wounded person from Gaza, even Hamas. And they've delivered babies there and all sorts of things. What about, despite everything I told you, what about the idea of ceasefires? On July 15th and July 17th and July 20th and July 26th, today's the 27th, Israel agreed to ceasefires. During those ceasefires, they kept getting rockets fired at them. It's been said that they had, Israel agreed to one more that the enemy has agreed to for today. But a communique that came this morning from the Prime Minister's office says, this morning, Sunday, 27th July 2014, the Prime Minister and Defense Minister have ordered the IDF to resume operations against the Hamas terrorists who violated the humanitarian truce. That's as of a few hours ago. Now, we hear about things from emails and friendly media. I know there's two people here who have spoken to Israelis within the last, including myself, within the last week, and it's different, folks. It's different. Think about our army and our soldiers. You don't think of them as relatives, do you? Generally speaking. But Jerry, could you just say for a minute what you were telling me about the Israeli army, and come up here, and then Eli, I'm going to ask you to say a minute about how people think about the soldiers. Jerry was telling me he was speaking to some people in Israel just this week. So tell them what you hear about what's going on there. You don't know what you don't remember? Is this the program on Alzheimer's? How do people think about the Army? How's it different than what people think here?
It's not an army. It's family. They're just kids. If you see the names of the people who died, 19 years old, 20 years old, 21-year-old boys, right? And many of them are not married, right? And when you list the names, it's the parents. They leave behind their parents, their grandparents, because it's not a professional army. It's an excellent army, but it is just family. Yes, I spoke to some friends who were in Rambam Hospital in Haifa last week, and were there when they were bringing in the wounded. But our conversation ended up talking about my friend's wife, who they found has inoperable brain cancer. So that's where the conversation led. But they were there, and they were rushing in injured all day long.
Thanks, Jerry. Eli, life goes on. I mean, we see pictures of people running to bomb shelters, and yet Eli was just speaking to somebody, what, yesterday, day before?
Yeah, my cousin. going out, going to the coffee shop, going to the malls. Only thing when they hear a siren, everybody knows where to run to. And sometimes when they are home, they have to run to the basement. They have a shelter there. And as soon as they hear the next siren comes, so everything goes back to normal, everybody knows. They all feel they are very safe. Tel Aviv, as long as you are a little bit north of Gaza in the missile ranges, a lot of people going to the north for the long weekend. But life goes on. I'm a former Israeli soldier.
Now I'd like to turn it over to Rich Moskowitz, and we have people who've got the list of names of soldiers killed since Friday. Rich.
Okay, if you have a sheet of paper, please stand up and I'll start and then we'll go around. These are the IDF soldiers who have been killed in the past few days. Captain Liad Lavi, an officer in infantry unit, died late Saturday after he was hospitalized in the wake of wounds he sustained in the southern Gaza Strip on Thursday. Sergeant Abraham Ritzvah, 21, from Petah Tikva, served in the Nahal Brigade and was killed early on Saturday in combat in northern Gaza.
Barak Raphael, a worker, 27-year-old, was killed by a mortar shell near Gaza. He was the 43rd soldier to die in Operation Protect Gaza.
Chief Warrant Officer Rami Kahol, non-commissioned officer serving in the Paratroopers Brigade, died after succumbing to wounds he had sustained in Gaza last week. He was 39 years old.
Staff Sergeant Amit Yaori from Jerusalem was in the engineering corps. He was killed on Friday in a firefight with Hamas gunmen in the southern Gaza Strip. He is survived by his parents and two siblings. Yaori's funeral will be held, oh my gosh, right now, in the military section of the Mount Herzl Cemetery in Jerusalem, right now.
Staff Sergeant Guy Levy, 21, near Amat in the north, served in the Armor Corps. Levy was killed on Friday afternoon when Hamas fired on an anti-tank missile at his position near a UN RWA school. He is survived by parents and his sister. His funeral will be held 5 p.m. at the Gan Vadim Cemetery.
Staff Sergeant Gal Bassan, 21, from Holon, served with the Engineering Corps. He was killed in northern Gaza Strip early on Saturday. Survived by his parents and two siblings. Bassan's funeral will be held at 5 p.m. on Sunday in the military section of Holon Cemetery.
Lieutenant Roy Paley's 21, from Tel Aviv, served in the Naha Brigade. He was killed when an anti-tank missile struck his position in Gaza early Saturday. He's survived by his parents and two siblings. Details for his funeral have not yet been announced.
Staff Sergeant Guy Boylan, 21, served as a combat engineer with the 7th Armored Brigade. He was killed in a firefight with Hamas gunmen on Friday in the southern Gaza Strip. He made Aliyah from New Zealand when he was 2 years old and lived in Kibbutz Ginosar on Lake Kinneret. He's survived by his parents and his sister. His funeral will be held 5 p.m. in Ginosar.
I'd like to say a couple of prayers, a couple of psalms. Yeah, you can stand. Prayers for the state of Israel. Avinu Shabbat Shemayim Tzur Yisrael, V'Agolo Borech Es Madinas Yisrael, Reshit Simachas V'Gulasenu, Hogein Olecho Ba'aras Chastecho, Orosh Olecho Sekas Sholomecho, Olach Orecho Ve'amintro L'Roshocho, Shorecho Ve'yotzecho, Ve'tzkanim Be'etzo Tova Milfanecho, Hazek Es Yedei Mignei Eretz Kachenu, Ve'chilem Olehenu Ve'shua, Ve'tores Nitzchon Ta'am Treim, Ve'totor Shalom Be'eretz Ve'samchas Olam Le'lo Shvecho, Ve'nomar Omein. Avinu Shabashamayim, Rock and Redeemer of the people Israel, bless the state of Israel with its promise of redemption. Shield it with your love, spread over it the shelter of your peace. Guide its leaders and advisors with your light and your truth. Help them with your good counsel. Strengthen the hands of those who defend our holy land. Deliver them. Crown their efforts with triumph. Bless the land with peace and its inhabitants with lasting joy. And let us say, Amen. Shir Lamachalos, Psalm 121, a song of ascent. I lift up my eyes to the hills. What is the source of my help? My help comes from Adonai, maker of heaven and earth. God will not let you stumble. Your guardian will not slumber. Indeed, the guardian of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. Adonai is your guardian, your shelter at your side. The sun will not smite you by day, nor the moon by night. Adonai will guard you against all evil. God will guard you, body and soul. Adonai will guard your going out and your coming home, now and forever. Amen. Thank you.
We already introduced. I'd like to thank Rich and Mike and the readers. You know, obviously we pray that we never have to do that type of ceremony again, but realistically, I have a feeling that that's a wish, and I'm not sure if it'll ever really happen. I'd like to ask Ed to come up for JCRC report, because I know you have a class you have to be at 10:30, so I'm jumping you ahead.
JCRC obviously has been focusing on their commitment to Israel in the last couple of weeks. So because there's been so much discussion today, I'm going to forgo discussion about that. The only thing I'm going to raise that the board might want to look at, Pam Vanadine is the chairman of the Israel Advocacy Program for JCRC. She may be calling upon us to do some work for them in terms of their programming. So I'll be bringing that to the board, and I'm hopeful we'll get a response. Okay.
Thank you. Ed, would you give us a quick finance report?
I don't think it's changed from the last meeting. Basically, our treasury is still somewhere around 21,000. Hey. And we added a new member today. In fact, two, I think. I just got one recently from someone also. So that's about it. Nothing earth-shattering.
And we sent the proposed budget for next year to the board. The board will evaluate it and hopefully have that in place, and we should be all set with our finances. And if you didn't get a 50-50, you could still see Barry on those, or Eli. Dick Knopf is not here. If you're, for some reason, missing your name tag, don't have it. Oh, tell Rich, that's even better, and we'll make sure you get it. Don't forget your membership.
That was something.
And also don't forget that a shirt is included with your membership now, so please remember to wear those shirts. We want to have those. Okay. Bob, comment on Maccabi?
First of all, I want to thank all of the people who have volunteered. We're slowly but surely getting our act together. Just so you have an idea, for the security, we have about 250 slots that have to be filled, which gives us one of the largest volunteer groups. And right now, we're about 90 slots short. So if anybody who has volunteered can take another slot, that would be very helpful. For those who have yet to volunteer, if you wish to, you can still volunteer. You just have to contact Sarah Rowland at extension 1090, and she will register you. But just to give you a little understanding of just how big an event this is, I'm going to quickly read the list of delegations that will be here for Maccabi. We've got them from Akron, Youngstown, Ohio, Albany, Schenectady, New York, Baltimore, Boston, Boulder, Colorado, Bridgewater, Central New Jersey, Chicago, Cleveland, East Bay, Berkeley, California, East Hills, Sid Jacobson, Fort Lauderdale, Great Britain, Greater Washington, Israel, LA West Side, Long Beach, Metro West, Mexico, Mid-Westchester, North Miami Beach, Orange County, California, Philadelphia, Rockland, San Diego, San Francisco, South Jersey, Springfield, Stamford, and Valley. Roughly 22 delegations. There'll be some 2,000 athletes. It is a very big undertaking. So I thank those who volunteer. Anybody else wishes to, please do. For those who are going to be part of the security committee, we have our training this coming Tuesday, the 29th, at 7 p.m. It will be downstairs at the in the social hall. Yes.
Do we have to call Sarah to be part of this, or can we just come to the meeting and get signed up?
I would call Sarah just so that she can find a position for you.
Can you give me the number again?
Extension 1090. As a matter of fact, she will be in her office. Our meeting gets over at 11:30. She'll be in her office about that time. Her office is, if you know where the teen lounge is, it's back behind the teen lounge. Rob Kiwi has his office. She has hers, right next to him. Again, thank you very much, and I'll turn it back to you, unless there are some other questions. Yes, Ed.
I want to thank you for taking the role that you're taking and doing this. I appreciate it.
Yeah, Bob has put in oodles of time on this, and being your president, what makes it so much easier for me, and I think especially for our guests and new members, everybody jumps in and takes a little piece of the puzzle, so to speak. And, it's so good for me because I could just call on somebody and I know that they'll jump in and handle it either as an officer, a vice president, or a person without a portfolio. But, we kind of spread the workload around, and it really makes it, very pleasurable to be able to do this. And I encourage our new members to also get just as involved. Dave, you have
As of a week and a half ago, they were still looking for some housing for hosts, families. My wife and I are going to host 2 kids. And if you want some information about the details, there's a lot of involvement, but not that much. You have to take them to the opening on a Sunday night. It's a 5-night, 5-6-day commitment. And in any event, they're looking for homes. If you want information, see me after the meeting. Thank you. It's the 10th through the 15th.
Yes, I was going to say, it starts, actually, families, our participants will start to arrive on the 7th. But the actual events start on the 10th, which is the opening ceremonies, which will be at the Sunbank Arena in Trenton. And then it's Sunday through Thursday night. Friday, the delegations leave. So that would be the 10th through the 15th.
questions on Maccabi? Mike?
I'd like to just say something about it. When it comes to the security thing, nobody's asking you to be a cop. The main thing is a presence. So we need bodies. I mean, just because you're sitting there and you say, my enforcement days are long gone. You just have to be there, and you'll have a special shirt. So you're not going to be asked to run a marathon, You just have to be there where you're supposed to be to show a presence. And one other thing, not Maccabi, but for those of you that are fairly new, you've been in other organizations where people get burned out. What Don said is right. People don't get burned out because everybody chips in. Everybody has to do something to make it easier for everybody else. The other thing is, how many organizations have you been in where guy's president, then you don't see him anymore because he got burned out? All our presidents are still around. Of course, we're going to be deporting Jerry to Florida in a couple months, but that's another thing. So thanks very much.
And while Mike brought that up, I'm just going to ask the past presidents that are here if you would just stand up, please. Jerry, that's you too, Jerry. Past presidents stand up. Bob, Jerry, Mike.
Rich is in the other room.
Who's in another room?
Rich.
And Rich is in another room. Past presidents. I just asked our past presidents to stand up. So, and these guys are a wealth of information. Something wrong with your shirt, Mike?
Shirts, go for the shirts.
Oh, well, the shirts, I think I had said, are part of your membership now. So if you're missing a shirt, please let us know, and we will make sure you have it. It comes with your name tag. That's all part of your $42. So please bring me. One of the reasons we're doing that is we want also a presence. When people see everybody walking in with a similar shirt, it draws attention. And that also would do us well as far as encouraging other people to join us. So please wear those at all South Jersey Men's Club functions. Okay. Getting to JAG. JAG is our Jewish athletic group. We started it way, way back. Dave's not here. I did ask Art to give us a brief report on softball, but I'd prefer when he does it, exclude the last weekend.
Well, I won't exclude the last weekend because that's all part of it. We are one of the original teams in the softball league, which was one of the original sports organized by JAG. Back, if I remember correctly, we started in 1996. I'm a charter member of the softball team. They can't get rid of me. We had a fairly successful season in the B division. During the regular season, we finished in first place, got us into the playoffs. We won in the semifinals. Unfortunately, we were beaten by a very good team from TBS in the finals. But all in all, it was a pretty successful season. Finished runner-up, which we've either been the champion or runner-up most of the last 8 or 9 years. That's pretty much it.
And all the JAG does, softball?
We have
My report.
JAG. We have many different events, and especially the new members. You'll be getting a survey from Dick to fill out. But we have pinochle, volleyball.
By the way, these are our softball uniforms.
Yes, that's where we originated our uniforms. Our shirts is from the softball team. So it fit right in, and it was designed by Barry Rosenberg, the logo, so it works real well. Ed, I know you have to go, and you had one more thing for us regarding a play.
Yeah, I have to leave in a minute for the Maccabi training. I'm getting my training in a few minutes. We're obviously looking for other activities to do besides meeting here and softball and things like that. We're not getting a great response to this, so I'm guessing it's not of great interest, but we're trying to see if anybody would like to go to the presentation in October in Philadelphia called Old Jews, New Jokes, something like that. Old Jokes, Jews, something like that. That's easy for you to say. So I'm going to ask Randy to send another notice out with my correct phone number this time. And somebody must have got a slew of phone calls. I don't know who it is. It wasn't my number.
She's starting the sideline.
What I'd like to also suggest is, since we are looking for other activities, if you have ideas, any of the board members or our presidents, see if you can come up with some creative ideas for us to engage in. So I'll send another notice out about this program in Philadelphia and see if there's any response. Right now, only 5 people have indicated an interest. Oh, I was also asked by Mike to remind you, we have a library book exchange, music exchange at that table. Help yourself, bring books next time. And we are also looking for donations of eyeglasses and toiletries.
And kosher food.
And kosher food for the Jewish family.
And cell phones.
And cell phones.
As you can see, new members and guests, we do a lot of things here. One of the things that Ed mentioned was we always looking for new things. Last year, I actually started a fantasy football league. I'm going to ask if you're a current owner, if you would just stand up. Current owner. These are the guys that are part of the 8 teams first. All the owners could sit down except if you won the championship last year. Oh, Marty. I'm going to ask Marty just to say a few words.
Fantasy football in general, it's fun. It really is. It starts with the draft, and that's even more of a fun thing. I still remember last year when we were picking players, and Mike lands up, he's going to pick Michael Vick for $1. He couldn't even get anybody to bid against him for $1, and then he tried to sell him. You really don't have to know too much about football to participate in fantasy football. Most of us, we watch football and we follow our own team. Even though I'm not an Eagles fan, occasionally I watch them. But when you get into fantasy football, all of a sudden you're watching teams that you never would think to watch. You're not really watching the team, you're watching your player. You don't care what happens except that your player either scores a touchdown, catches a reception, or whatever the case is. It just becomes very exciting. And you become, for several weeks, you become a football freak. So as I say, it's fun. Hopefully we can grow a little bit larger, and I hope, again, to win, guys.
Marty?
Yep.
Hopefully we don't have that piece on tape. Our draft is August 26th at La Terraza. We are looking for 2 to 4 more teams. You could also, if you want to partner up with other people, you could get one team and have 2 or 3 people. We're more than happy to do that. No experience is needed. Mike?
Now, I'd like to add that you really don't have to know much about the players or football. As Marty will tell you, the guy who wins is the one whose players experience the fewest injuries. Yep. Is that right, Marty?
That is absolutely true.
But it is a lot of fun. And our new members, our guests, you're welcome to participate as well. If you're interested, please let me know at the end of the meeting. Okay, and I think that brings us to Dave to introduce our first guest. First guest.
Don. Jessica.
Oh, one second. Bob, you're pointing. Yeah, he's introducing him.
Oh, okay.
That's. Thank you, but Dave is going to introduce her. And there is an investment club that Art is involved with.
We'll have a meeting after the...
All right, meeting after. Okay, and Dave will introduce our first 2 speakers.
It's with great pleasure that I introduce Ann Miller, President of Jewish Family and Children's Services here. As we look forward in the future of our 2 organizations working together, she's going to tell us about a new program that they have. Welcome.
Thank you, my
You're
dear
welcome.
friend. Well, good morning. What an amazing group you are. You do a lot of things, and it's really great for me coming from JFCS to see what you do with JCRC, JCC, all those J's that come under the Federation umbrella. But I'm here to represent JFCS. I thank you for letting me come. I've been here before. Some of you may recognize me. I love looking around this room and seeing familiar and friendly faces. We are the social service agency under the Federation umbrella. So, and our programs evolve as we go along. We look for needs. So before I tell you about the new program that I came to talk to you about, I know when I've been here before, I see people wearing like veterans hats and things. Can I just see, by a show of hands, how many of you were in the Army at one point? Okay.
Military.
Well, I'm going to get there. How about the Navy? Okay. Air Force? All right. Do we have any Marines in the room? No? Okay. Did I miss any branches?
Coast Guard.
Coast Guard. Okay. National Guard. All right. Great. I knew that I would see veterans in this room, and that's why I came to talk to you today. as I said, our programs evolve as we see needs. And we've been trying to develop a veteran service program. And so we did a lot of research to see what could we do, what do veterans need? And a need that came up was transportation needs. That veterans, young and old, not just senior citizens, we have a lot of young people who have been injured, and they're having trouble getting transportation to doctor's appointments and things like that. So we have developed a program called Take the Wheel, and it's a volunteer program, veteran to veteran volunteer driving service, where we will match people up and you can drive veterans to doctor's appointments. And it's being underwritten by a donor of ours who was interested in doing this. And so I brought information about it today. What I can do, Dave, should I leave information on that back table? David, okay, I'll leave pamphlets. I even have flyers. What we're trying to do now, we're hoping to roll out this program in the fall. And so what we're doing now is we're kind of checking to see which people would like to be volunteers for the program, and maybe if there are some people who need services. So there's flyers for those different things. I'll leave everything on the back so that before you leave, you can look for that. And if you have any questions about that, there's a name and number on the brochures. And then just to quickly update you on a couple other things, because I've been here a couple times before. A little update on our food pantry, because I know you've been helping us with that. Summertime is very difficult for us. Demand goes up. A lot of kids, they're not in school right now, so they're not getting subsidized meals at school. So the demand for the food pantry is as sky high as it's always been. And we're doing as many food drives as we can. For example, next week, we're doing a food drive at the JCC camps that we're taking this opportunity to teach the kids about our food pantry and about hunger in our community. And on Thursday, a group of us are going down to the camp. We're going to greet the kids as they come off the bus, and they're all bringing a can or a package or something, and we're going to put it all together, and then we have the CITs who are going to sort it and put it in our food pantries. So the need is there. I know you guys have helped us in the past, and we appreciate everything you do. Just to give you a quick idea of other things that we've done, last week we did a program called Soup Sisters. We had a group of 55 CITs at the camps who cooked from scratch about 100 quarts of vegetable soup. The original plan was to have our seniors from our NORC, which is our naturally occurring retirement community at the Towers of Windsor. The original plan was to have the seniors come and work with the CITs, so it was a multi-generational program, but there's no air conditioning in the kitchen. So we felt that that was really not a good environment to bring the seniors in at this time. But we're planning to do one of those, a day in the fall where the CITs can come and work with the seniors on a project during the day. So that's basically the update. Again, we thank you for everything you've done. If you ever have questions about JFCS programs, because we serve people from birth through senior services, special needs counseling, we have a family assistance program. You know, we have a huge program. So if there's any question you ever have, you can help them get to me. And we'll be doing another major food drive in the fall. I know last year you helped us with that, and that was fabulous. So I'll make sure you get information about that too. Any questions? Yeah.
Are you inviting only veterans to be part of the driving program, or might anyone become part of the driving program?
Well, I'll tell you what, we have extensive volunteer programs. If you are interested in being part of that program, nobody's going to turn you away, okay? So, and again, there's no charge. What we've been underwritten, which will cover the staff to organize and everything, and then what we're hoping to be able to do is even repay people for gas and things like that if we can do that. So, absolutely. Okay, so I'll leave everything in the back. Any questions, please don't hesitate. And thanks again for letting me come again. And I'll leave everything in the back. Thank you.
See you later, Steve.
Where's Don?
Oh, you know what, in this week's Voice, on page 38, there's a great article about this Take the Wheel program. So go home and check it out, and deal with the details.
And thank you again for coming and presenting that information to us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. And Dave, I'm going to put you right back to work. Do you want to introduce our speaker?
There's also a great picture of our president in that notice.
Who is there? I don't know. That's the first I've ever heard my.
There's a shot
And it's a great picture.
of men's clubs, presidents.
I will take a look.
I just wish he hadn't been drinking.
Can you hit the space bar to get your picture?
Yeah, the computer's got to restart. It was shut down. Sorry.
I'm pleased to introduce Manny Porat, doctor from Reconstructive Orthopedics at Virtua. He's here to tell us about joint replacement and reconstructive surgery. Welcome. Thank you for coming.
All right, thank you guys for having me. I'm going to wait. The computer should restart. I think it just shut down for battery power. So let me tell you about, I represent two entities here in South Jersey. The first is Reconstructive Orthopedics. We are one of the largest South Jersey-based orthopedic groups here in the South Jersey region, in the Tri-County region, I should say. And we do it all. We do from head to toe. We have over 20 surgeons, and we take care of both bone care as well as joint needs. So I'm one of the joint surgeons from Recon. I also represent Virtua's Joint Replacement Institute, which I'm positive that you've heard the advertising, Get Your Life Back. So we are, Virtua has opened a single-based joint replacement institute based on their Voorhees campus over the last, I would say, a little over about a year. And we do hip and knee replacements as well as revisions and hip arthroscopy. So I'm going to talk to you today about new developments in hip and knee replacements. Some of you may be very familiar with hip and knee replacements as well as reconstructive orthopedics. So I was always told if you're doing a talk, which there were many talks today, either start with a joke or statistics. And my wife always tells me I'm not funny. So I'm gonna start with statistics, all right? In 2030, the demand for primary total hip replacements, arthroplasty, is estimated to grow 175%. And the demand for primary total knees is going to grow up 600%. Some of you in the room may be very intimately familiar with that, again. Having said that, demand for the revisions of these are also going to go up a tremendous amount, which unfortunately is a reality of the surgeries happening. So very briefly, it's difficult to talk about what's new in a field if you haven't looked what was there before, right? So hip replacements, the modern day type of hip replacements were happening for at least over a century in this country itself. A very famous surgeon, his name was Smith Peterson, he first thought it would be a good idea to take out an arthritic hip and put in a molded piece of glass that didn't result in very happy patients. But in 1925, that's what they did. In the 1950s into the 1960s, they've kind of refashioned this. Very famous surgeon, his name is Sir Charnley. He was in the United Kingdom. He's really credited with being the godfather, so to speak, performing the first type of hip replacements, similar to what we do today with the metal type prostheses that is at that time cemented in. They look to change the bearing surface. The whole kit and caboodle about a hip or knee replacement is an arthritic knee, which usually entails two bones grinding against each other, causing both pain, disability, and inflammation, and resurfacing that, creating new bearing surfaces to alter that state. Predictable fixation. So besides for putting in new surfaces, you also have to have it stay in there. So initially, Sir Charnley, as we talked about before, he was using bone cement. In orthopedics, like the surgeons, they like to take credit for a lot of things, as surgeons do. But actually they took it from the dentist. So the cement that they initially used for the hip and knee replacements per se actually came from dentists. So that was quite good. It's been going on for quite some time. So up into 2000, the last 10, 15 years, kind of what's been going on in hip replacements. We've been focused on rapid recovery protocols, improving pain management, reducing surgical dissection. Each one of these fields have demonstrated over the last 10, 15 years to not only improve outcomes, have patients recover quicker, but also get patients back to the things that they want to do, which is the initial goal of any replacement. So rapid recovery protocols. 10 years ago, they used to have you wait in your bed for about 2-3 days before you get up. That's not anymore. We get up same day as the surgery. They focus on returning home now instead of going to a rehab for 3 days to a week. Immediate weight bearing. It used to be that you really don't want to put any weight on it for quite some time. A lot of these mantras have changed. Some of it because of the techniques, some of it also because of the implant and prostheses. Pain management. No patient likes to be in pain, right? You're not going to get a patient to do what you want them to do or what they want to do if they're in pain. So we're using multimodal anesthesia, preemptive analgesia, avoiding side effects. All of these are kind of a combination, a mix of drugs and techniques that help reduce the unfortunate, unwarranted side effects of any surgery. What can we do as surgeons, right? Can't just blame everybody else. We do like to do that. Minimally invasive total hip replacements. That is what you would consider sexy now in hip replacement surgery. That's somewhat of an umbrella term. That can either mean abbreviated incisions using standard techniques, modifying the standard type of approaches with less soft tissue dissection, or approaches that don't necessarily cut muscle and slip in between natural planes in the body. One of these, as the aforementioned, is very popular nowadays in patients who are seeking total hip replacements. This would be a direct anterior approach or a minimally invasive approach. And what this has done is that it's an incision made in the front of the hip. Dissection down is carried between muscles, exploiting a natural plane. The muscles are not necessarily cut. They're usually retracted from the field. It provides a limited but focused arena for a surgeon to put in their hip replacement. Well, great. Well, what does that matter? It has been shown in several recent studies demonstrating early recovery, higher rates of hospital discharge to home, improved pain scores, improved abductor strength within the muscles so we can get you back to softball, improved gait velocity, get patients walking faster. So who's a good candidate, right? You go to the doctor. Who's a good candidate for this? It's not necessarily concrete in the studies right now. Who's a good candidate, who's not a good candidate. It's not really considered an extensile approach, which generally means that for patients who have very complicated hip replacements, maybe not the best idea to do at the current time. There are also benefits to the surgeon as well as the hospital, which benefits the community. The incision is in the front of the hip, so people are not laying down on the surgical site. There's no need to close or repair muscles. Patients lying flat, it's an easy to administer the anesthesia and get them in a well comfortable position. The length of stay in the hospital has been decreased by an average of at least about a day to about 2.3 days. Reduced hospital costs on average, it's $3,900 per patient, which helps communities in general. All right, that was a brief overview of hip replacements, minimally invasive hips, knee pain. Does anybody have knee pain? I'm surprised, right? That's pretty good. Usually get more. Knee pain. I have knee pain. So where do we go from knee replacements? So knee replacements are not new. Knee replacements have been going on for quite some time. In the 1940s into the 50s and early 60s, they used to replace the knee. Literally remove it and put in a hinge similar to what you see on a door. That also did not work out very well. So we stopped doing that. In the 1970s, two very famous surgeons worked in the Hospital for Special Surgery, which is a hospital in New York, to develop what's called the prototype for what we consider the modern day knee replacement. It is somewhat of a misnomer. It is called a total knee replacement. It is not. It should be called a knee resurfacing for historic reasons, we don't really change it. It's much easier to just call it a knee replacement. In the 1980s, they've changed the design. In the 1990s, they improved the components and the wearing of these components so that they would last much longer. So what's going on in knee replacements 2000s, considering it is a tremendous burden for both the patient, community, as well as the country, spending a lot of money on it? Navigation computer-assisted surgery. This is something that you may have heard of. This is something that your doctor may have talked to you about. It's still under investigation. What this effectively means is performing a knee replacement with the aid assistance of a computer of some sort. Help making cuts and help implanting the prostheses. Currently, most studies demonstrate that there's no real functional outcome in short-term survivals for a knee replacement done well by a surgeon doing conventional approaches versus a navigated knee. But yet again, an interesting development that's still being studied. Custom fit knees. You may talk to your surgeon and he may recommend you to undergo a custom fit knee. What this effectively means is that patients are preoperatively seen and evaluated by an MRI or a CT scan to produce a jig or a custom cutting block for a specific knee. It sounds like a great idea and certainly may prove in the future to be beneficial. Unfortunately, again, currently the technology hasn't really demonstrated any overt, greatly improvements in outcomes. Minimally invasive total knee replacements. Well, what does that mean? A minimally invasive total knee is somewhat of an umbrella term, much like we talked about for a hip replacement. That can either be an abbreviated incision length, reduced surgical dissection, or minimize trauma to a surgical site. So has this made a difference? Well, reduced dissection and limited exposure can spare quadriceps muscles from shutting down, often seen in the first couple weeks of surgery. Who's capable of getting this and who's capable of doing it? Those are our old criteria, so this has been looked at for several years. Minimally invasive total knee replacements was initially limited to a whole bunch of people who couldn't get it, and that is not true anymore. Most patients, in fact the majority of patients with severe arthritis of their knees, are capable of undergoing or candidates for a minimally total knee replacement. Benefits to patients. Well, patients who undergo minimally invasive surgery have decreased postoperative pain. They have early and improved range of motion, shorter hospital stays, again, quicker quadriceps recovery. These are all benefits not only to the patient, but also, again, to the hospital. Decreased surgical wound size means decreased complications, generally less blood loss. Recent studies demonstrated overall hospital decrease in cost. Again, that also helps the community. So both these, minimally invasive hip replacements and minimally invasive total knee replacements, are available for the community, are also something that you should generally think about for joint pain when your surgeon or doctor, or who is talking to you about it, is recommending arthroplasty or joint replacement. Brief overview. Questions? Shoot.
My wife had double hip replacement about 3 years ago, and it appears to be successful. I'm not raising the question out of complaint. But one observation is, after she had the operation, after she had her, at the same time, double hip replacement, there seemed to be new techniques that developed. How prevalent is the sharing of new techniques between surgeons? Why does it appear that certain surgeons seem to be attached or have their name attached to certain techniques, and other surgeons don't seem to do those particular techniques? Is there common sharing? Is there a vehicle?
Sure, that is a loaded and very tough question. I will try to answer it, I think, as politically correct as I can. Yes, there are certainly developed, just like in most fields of medicine, as well as engineering and technology, certainly developments and improvements in what we think are improvements are in surgery, and replacements definitely do happen through a community level to a regional level and ultimately to a national level. The speed at which that happens, don't forget, is probably limited for a multitude of factors. Much like getting an appropriate drug passed through the FDA, a lot of study, a lot of time and money and effort has to go into it prior to this becoming a mainstay of practice. So certainly, I couldn't agree with you more. Would love to see faster kind of implementation of certain techniques. Certainly that occurs at a level that is stymied or hampered, probably not so much by the physician as the kind of community at large.
Yes, and it seems that quite a few practices in medicine are driven by insurance concerns. How is that reflected in your field?
Sure. Very good question. I would tell you that recent developments in healthcare, the Health and Affordability Care Act, generally, although a great concern for many patients who will come in, doesn't necessarily have at its heart or its key restriction to access, particularly for hip and knee replacements, and a kind of a limited flow. So the availability of these surgeries are currently not being hampered by recent restrictions from the government, not necessarily per se for health care industries. They inevitably follow suit depending upon CMS and what Medicare does.
A related question would be also driven by concerns over lawsuits.
Lawsuits. You know, I think in any field, and medicine certainly doesn't, is not protected against this. Lawsuits are a concern. But a good doctor, a good physician, a good surgeon is going to treat the patient how they should be treated based on the medicine and not necessarily remove care or give care based on whether there's going to be a lawsuit involved.
Question, I have a quadricep tear, and the doctors I go to, I have arthritis outward days a day, hem and haw about knee replacement. Now, I see your advertisements say that you bypass the quadriceps, is that correct?
So we do, we specialize at Reconstructive Orthopedics, and again, we practice at that Joint Replacement Institute that I'm sure you probably heard. We do a minimally invasive technique. We spare the main quadriceps tendon. Like we talked about in the program, it doesn't necessarily produce a superior outcome. We don't necessarily say that. Whatever outcome that patients are going to get, you tend to get there quicker.
Yeah, thank you.
You mentioned at the beginning revisions. Tell us what revisions are.
Sure. So the components are, for lack of a better term, they have a shelf life, so to speak. So when this surgery was initially being done, as we talked about 20 years ago or so, they would wait for patients to get into much more of a sedentary lifestyle prior to undergoing arthroplasty. The main concern for that is, one, the prosthesis wasn't necessarily designed for that, but probably more importantly is the overall shelf life, so to speak, or the viability of these implants decreased over time, much like a native knee does. We just haven't found the components that last the same time as a native knee. Over the last decade to 15 years, what's happened is that patients, people in general, the communities, are much more active. They're playing softball in a much later years, so they're experiencing joint pain. They have pain in their hips, pain in their elbows, in their shoulders. So when we look at these prostheses that were put in the 1980s and prior even before, they start to wear out. They start to decrease in their viability. That usually causes pain, discomfort, maybe some issues, and then need to be fixed.
What's the latest in the ones that you're doing today? What kind of shelf life?
Sure. So we work very closely with industry, as you can imagine, in orthopedics, particularly in joint replacement. The companies will sell you on wonderful data in their laboratories demonstrating that the prostheses that they have simulated lasted 30 years, 90% survival at 30 years. Unfortunately, when I consult patients, I don't necessarily, I want them to take that with a grain of salt. Understand that these were done in a laboratory, and that's not somebody walking around doing the activities that they'd like to do. So, you know, the prostheses that we put in haven't been around for 30 years. So you have to, you know, kind of... 15. There's good data, the old data demonstrating 80% viability at 10, 15 years. I do have a, you know, good sense of that.
Probably more of a comment. I had such knee pain 3 years ago. I really couldn't even stand. Couldn't walk more than a couple hundred feet. And I went to, I guess it's your colleague, Scott Schultz, and he evaluated my knee and did a total knee replacement. I went in at 6 in the morning. I was home for dinner at 7, same day. And I wish the rest of me felt this good as him.
I didn't pay him to say that.
So when you see, or you or your colleagues see a patient who has hip problems, about what % of the time do you recommend total hip replacement, one hip, or maybe doing nothing and just medication and physical therapy?
Sure, it's a great question. Ultimately, the decision to undergo arthroplasty and surgery in general for this type of issue or pathology is elective. Patients choose it. So when there are symptoms which typically correlate to their radiographic findings, when it becomes severe enough and they have tried and failed conservative measures, that's when you choose to undergo, you know, elective surgery.
The reason I asked that, my wife actually had hip replacement 2 months ago, and she saw 3 different doctors and got 3 different opinions. One said total hip, one said I only do one hip at a time, I'll do one now, one later, and the other one said I think you can get by for a while. So she wound up choosing the total hip replacement option, and they told her about 6 weeks, and after 2 months, she's still, I'd say, not that close to being fully recovered.
Sure.
And obviously you don't know her specific situation, but she was trying to reconcile why all these doctors had these different opinions on her one case.
So typically, you know, and again, they're not cars. Everybody comes in with different levels of, you know, issues and pathology, medical comorbidities. Having said that, the choice for elective total hip replacement is typically given to patients when they have tried and failed conservative measures, which it may be that she has tried. Unfortunately, as of 2014, we don't have a wonderful amount of conservative measures. So it's not uncommon for patients to come in, have tried activity modification, anti-inflammatories, weight reduction, use of an ambulatory assisted device, and failed all of those.
What about the one hip versus 2?
Sure. A wonderful question, an interesting question, sparks a debate that probably, you know, I'm happy to, you know, discuss with you, probably needs a little bit more time than, you know, 30 seconds on the stand.
So in other words, it just depends.
You can. Certainly bilateral simultaneous hip replacements are a viable option. Certainly it should be chosen in a patient who is quite a good candidate for it. It does increase somewhat of the morbidity associated with this. There are some complications that occur at slightly higher rates. But again, that is something that is a give and take that you talk with the patient about and have a interaction with, not a you got to do this and that's the only option. I'm going to go right back around the room.
Your numbers showing the increase may seem staggering.
They are.
So the question is, other than physical injury, it appears that the amount of arthritic cases is getting worse. Is that a fair assumption, or something else that's...
It is a fair assumption. It's not an assumption. It's unfortunately a fact, a reality of life. The reasons for it, which I think is what you're postulating, are multifactorial. So, the longevity of the average male and female have dramatically increased. The activity of the average age of the female and male have also increased. So we're no longer as sedentary as we used to be. Hip arthritis has a primary genetic component to it. Majority of the cases of hip arthritis that were kind of ignored in the 50s, 60s, and 70s because there weren't great viable options for them. There are now, so we're looking for it more commonly. Patients are living longer and seeking relief of those symptoms. As far as knee arthritis, it has both a genetic and environmental factor to it. So it's not only what we are born with, but also what we've done in our lifetime. And more importantly is how we're going to pay for it, which is a better question.
I seem to remember reading that in this country it's illegal to reuse cadaver replacement parts.
Cadaver replacement parts?
They are shipped overseas. Is this of a great danger to patients overseas?
So we do use, there are a multitude, the most commonly is a musculoskeletal foundation, MTF. They do have cadaver parts that we use. For instance, often ligament reconstruction in this country is often used cadaver parts. Cadaver bone is often, and again, all this is federally regulated, used in cases as well. Implants, which I think is maybe what you were asking, implants themselves are not currently allowed in this country to be used again. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's not a bad idea and they can't be safely used. It is just currently not an FDA-approved source of treatment for patients here in this country. In other countries, yes, you can certainly purchase, obtain, one way or another, a previously used or a cleaned up fabricated prostheses. That is true. And cheaper.
Do you envision the day when all joint replacement will be custom based on maybe 3D manufacturing?
Yes. Short answer to that is yes. Ultimately, the future of joint replacement surgery in general, in order to streamline it, cost effectiveness, and reduce outliers, will be largely computer navigated and assisted, which is, I think, what you're asking.
I could use a new spinal cord. Is there a new spinal column? Is there any work being done on this?
Be careful what you ask for.
This spinal column.
Yeah, so spine pain has is a little out of this realm. It is certainly complicated. I'm happy to talk to you about it. We have a wonderful spine team. They're fantastic. And I would encourage you, if you are interested, have one of our spine surgeons come talk to you about operative and non-operative spine care. I think it's a debilitating type pain. There are good treatments out there, and we have a fantastic team, and I'm happy to set that up.
Not yet.
Yeah, yes, not a problem.
Don't have any methods. I have like sciatica. Do you guys handle that?
I said Reconstructive Orthopedics? Yes, absolutely. Not a problem. Yes, I can certainly meet with you after and get you a name and number and get you set up. We do sciatica.
My wife had both knees surgically replaced and her shoulder done by stem cell. You doing any stem cell work?
So personally, I don't do any stem cell. I do stick to prostheses more most of the time. Certainly for shoulder pain, and I would say non-operative treatment in general, we do the whole kit and caboodle. So if you're interested in non-operative treatment and it's a viable option, we absolutely have a multitude of physicians to help with that. Absolutely.
Any other questions for our guests?
Thank you guys for having me.
Manny, thank you so much.
Not a problem.
We appreciate
Thank
it. Certificate.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Very interesting. You also, as our speaker, you get the privilege.
I'm doing the rap.
This is 50% is 34.
It's supposed to say privilege and also probably, all right. The winning number, do you want?
Okay. Well, before I give the winning number, first of all, a reminder, our September meeting is not the last weekend of the month. We didn't have the room available September 21st. I'm sure Randy will to that extent. And I missed also Tour de Schools is September 21st. We do have Alan Finkelstein, our rep, riding in the race. And if you go to our website, you'll see where you can make a donation if you would like to do so for that. And a reminder, any guests or new members, if you would give your information to Rich, we're up back there. We'll make sure that Dick Nuff contacts you. Ned, question? Yes. I was just pointing out that it's September meeting. The August meeting is the 24th. 24th. Okay. Winning number 075439.
Anybody but Bob again.
075439. Do I need to look?
Where's 39? You got it, I can see it.
Are you serious?
Take it, he pulled out of the bag?
Okay, any other items before we adjourn? Okay, guys, thanks so much. I really appreciate it.